The voice said, "Come see this. It's amazing." It sounded exactly like my friend, but my friend was ahead of me on the trail, not behind. When I turned around, there was nothing there. You develop habits out here. You learn to tell a squirrel from a branch crack, a hiker from a shifting wind. You learn that the forest has 1,000 voices, and most of them aren't yours. But every now and then, someone hears something they recognize, a voice that sounds familiar, human, safe, until they realize it's coming from the wrong direction. This isn't about ghost stories. It's about real hikers, real trails, and the moments when sound itself turns against you. 4 hikers. 4 different trails. Each heard something that wanted them to listen back. The echo in the gorge. Zion National Park in late summer hums like a living thing. Wind funnels between red sandstone walls, carrying the smell of dust and juniper. Every sound feels heavier here. Your breath, your boots, even the rasp of your backpack zipper echoes back like an accusation. Jacob Lynn knew this better than most. He wasn't a thrill seeker or a ghost hunter. He was a podcaster. His show, Soundtracks of Silence, explored how natural acoustics shape mood and memory. He'd recorded in glaciers, caves, and forests, but Zion was supposed to be different. The park's layered canyons acted like tuning forks for the earth. He hiked into a narrow gorge off the main trail just before sunset, the kind of slot canyon where the walls close in until the sky becomes a ribbon. His recorder, a small zoom unit with directional mics, blinked red against the stone. "Entry log," he said. "Canyon test, August 29th, 17, 42 hours. Checking echo delay." The playback caught his voice bouncing between the walls. 3 echoes, crisp, mathematical. Then a 4th. Fainter, lower. It said, "Entry log." Jacob frowned. That wasn't unusual. Sound behaved strangely in enclosed terrain. He clapped once, waited. The return was clean. So he continued deeper. Every few minutes, he spoke notes into the recorder, describing mineral color, moisture, and bird activity. He didn't notice the exact moment the birds went quiet. Field note, the science of echo illusions. Canyon systems like Zion act as acoustic mirrors. Smooth sandstone reflects mid-range frequencies, human speech, with high fidelity, while narrow angles can delay reflections long enough to simulate multiple sources. When echoes overlap imperfectly, the brain interprets them as separate voices. It's called auditory mirage, your own words returning late enough to sound like someone else's. Add infrasound below 20 hertz, often caused by shifting air pressure or distant thunder, and the body registers vibration as dread. The feeling of being followed is, in part, your nervous system mistaking low-frequency resonance for footsteps. But science has limits. It can explain the how, not always the when. At 1809, Jacob's log shifts tone. "Something odd," he says. Playback delay increasing. Sounds like someone whispering over the reflection. He claps again. The sound returns distorted, hollow. Then he hears it. Jacob. His own name stretched thin by distance, and unmistakably his voice. He spins around, mic raised, light catching dust motes. The canyon behind him is empty. Still, he swears he hears someone breathing, steady, deliberate, echoing the rhythm of his own. He starts back toward the entrance, recording the entire time. Later, when rescuers review his file, the audio remains stable until the final minute. Then, layered under the ambient hum comes a phrase, same pitch, same tone, his own voice saying, "Stop recording." But the timestamp reads 1 minute before he actually spoke it. Park rangers mark the case as psychological event triggered by environmental conditions. His equipment checks out fine. His data shows no transmission overlap, no interference. In his private notes, Jacob writes only one sentence. "The canyon remembered me too early." The report closes with a margin note. Ranger E. Ward's handwriting, familiar from prior files. Rule of the Gorge. If the echo says your name first, leave it unanswered. The meadow that answered back. The Great Smoky Mountains don't go quiet all at once. Sound fades in layers. Insects first, then birds, then the wind itself. What's left behind isn't silence. It's something denser, like the air holding its breath. It was late afternoon when the hikers reached the meadow. 4 of them, all experienced backpackers who'd been through rain, fog, and every trick the Smokies could throw at a compass. They'd planned for one last night before hiking out, a small victory lap near Andrews Bald, famous for its wildflowers and wide horizon views. The sky, however, had other plans. A summer storm rolled through without warning. They laughed about it, ducking into their tents as thunder rolled down the ridge like a slow drumbeat. By the time the rain stopped, fog had replaced the view, white, weightless, endless. That's when the voice called her name. Her name was Riley Chen, 29, mechanical engineer by trade, weekend hiker by passion. She'd just stepped out of her tent to check the guy lines when she heard it from somewhere near the tree line. "Riley, come see this. It's amazing!" It sounded exactly like her best friend and hiking partner, Leah. Same cadence, same cheerful tone, the kind of voice you answer before you think. "Coming!" Riley called back automatically and started toward it. The fog swallowed her in 3 steps. "Leah?" she called again. "Over here." Closer now, no more than 10 yards. She could almost see a shadow through the mist, moving just beyond the next patch of flowers. "Hold on, I can't see you." "Riley!" This time, it came from her left, then her right, then behind her. The voice moved like water around a rock. Every time she turned, it flowed to another side. Always her name, always her friend's voice. "Leah?" No answer, just fog. Field note. Sound in the Smokies. The Smoky Mountains are notorious for temperature inversion layers. When warm air traps a cooler layer beneath it, sound, which normally travels upward and disperses, bends back toward the ground instead. Under these conditions, a single shout can refract, curve, and return from multiple directions, seeming to circle the listener. Combine this with auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to form words from ambiguous sounds, and hikers may perceive speech or movement where none exists. But the key distinction is timing. Natural echoes overlap chaotically. They never move in sync with a person's steps. Back in the meadow, Riley began to notice something wrong with her own rhythm. Every time she took a step, the voice matched her pace. The crunch of grass underfoot answered by a soft echo half a beat behind. Then she heard her name again, but layered. Her friend's voice and her own, slightly delayed, saying it together. She froze. From somewhere behind the fog, she heard her friends laughing. Real, distant, unmistakable. Then, overlapping them, her own laughter coming from the trees. "Leah," she whispered. The voice whispered back, perfectly synchronized. "Leah?" Her panic didn't spike at the sound. It spiked at the timing. The thing behind her knew when she'd speak before she did. She turned in a slow circle, GPS still blinking on her wrist. The screen jittered, coordinates shifting back and forth like a compass spinning in place. Then, suddenly, the fog lifted. The meadow returned, quiet and sun-pale, her friends standing near the tents 20 yards away, waving at her. She looked down. Her footprints traced a looping pattern through the wet grass. A figure 8, starting and ending at the same tree. That night, when she uploaded her GPS log for review, the tracker showed something stranger. Her recorded position shifted every 12.3 seconds, even when she'd been standing still. The same interval found in other unexplained field cases. In her written statement, Riley described the voice simply. "It wanted me to come see something, but I think it was already looking." The cave that spoke twice. Mammoth Cave doesn't echo the way you think it should. Sound in there doesn't return in neat, familiar waves. It bends, slides, and reshapes itself until your own voice sounds like a stranger's. That's what brought Nathan Rosales down there in the first place. He wasn't a thrill seeker. He was a graduate research assistant from Louisville, working on a paper about subterranean resonance, the way low-frequency sounds move through limestone chambers. The park had granted him limited after-hours access to the Floyd's Fork extension, an inactive section closed to the public. He logged every step on his field recorder. "Time, 1923, he said. Ambient temperature, 54 degrees Fahrenheit. No wind flow. Testing echo delay in lower chamber." He clapped once. The response came 4 seconds later, faint but pure. He smiled. Textbook data. But 15 minutes deeper, the cave began to change. The walls grew smoother, like someone had polished them with heat. His light caught flecks of mica glinting like tiny eyes. He stopped to make another note. Chamber width narrowing, possible micro-collapse ahead. Then, almost joking, he added, "Anyone down here?" The question bounced ahead into the dark, the syllables stretching until they didn't sound like words anymore. He waited for the echo to die. It didn't. It came back as a voice. "Anyone down here?" Same tone, same rhythm, but lower, slower, like a version of himself breathing through stone. Field note: sound beneath the earth. In subterranean environments, sound behaves differently. Cavern walls don't simply reflect. They absorb, delay, and re-emit vibration through the rock's crystalline structure. A single word can fracture into layers, returning seconds, even minutes, out of sync. This is called harmonic feedback, and it's why researchers in deep cave systems often experience phantom responses. Add to that isolation-induced auditory projection, a psychological effect in total darkness. When deprived of light and orientation cues, the brain begins assigning identity to noise. Your breath becomes someone else's whisper. Science explains it well enough, until the pattern starts breathing back. At 1954, Nathan's log changes tone. Voice repeating question, he says, voice trembling slightly, but delay not consistent with known echo intervals. Interval approximately 12 seconds. He tests it again. "Is anyone down here?" He waits. 12.3 seconds later, the voice returns. "Down here." He exhales, a nervous laugh. "Okay," he says quietly into the mic. "That's weird." Then, a second voice joins the first. Fainter, but speaking in sync. "That's weird." The sound moves, not forward, not back, but around him, circling the chamber as though the cave itself were learning his words. His recorder captures the vibration, a deep, rhythmic pulse under every echo, like air expanding in lungs. He tries to backtrack, but the tunnel looks different now. The same markings appear on both walls, and the floor slopes the wrong direction. He mutters to himself, "Keep moving towards sound, not away from it. Sound means open air." 12 seconds later, a reply comes. "Keep moving." By the time the park's rescue team reaches him, almost 2 hours later, they find Nathan sitting upright near a dead-end alcove. Lights still on, eyes unfocused. He's alive, mildly hypothermic, but silent. His microphone continues to record. The first half of the file is fieldwork, clear speech, steady rhythm. The second half is harder to classify. 2 voices, identical, overlapping. One delayed by half a second. Both whispering the same phrase over and over. "Don't ask again." In his recovery debrief, Nathan writes one line before signing off the form. Echoes don't repeat, they remember. Later margin note, Ranger Elias Ward. Rule of the deep zones. If the dark answers you, leave the question behind. The voice by the waterline. The boundary waters are not silent places. Not really. They breathe. The lakes exhale mist. The pines sigh. And if you're quiet enough, you can hear the mosquitoes droning like a living current. At dusk, sound travels twice as far over water. The air cools, the lake flattens, and every ripple becomes an amplifier. That's why Alex and Jordan, two friends from Duluth, chose twilight for their last paddle. The world felt bigger then, wider, suspended between day and night. Their yellow Labrador, Toby, sat steady in the bow, a good trail dog, fearless and water-trained. The first call came just as the sun touched the tree line. "Over here!" A man's voice, deep, urgent, echoing across the still lake. Jordan lifted her paddle. "You hear that?" Alex nodded, scanning the opposite shore. Probably someone who lost their bearings. They rowed toward the sound. The water carried their rhythm. Dip, pull, drip, perfect symmetry. Then the voice again. "Over here!" Closer this time, but not from the same place. Alex frowned. Maybe he's moving along the bank. Toby whined, a low, rising sound that didn't belong in his throat. "Hey, boy, it's fine," Jordan said, reaching to calm him, but the dog's eyes were locked on the far end of the lake, muscles trembling. He refused to look directly at the sound, just stared at the reflection of the trees rippling across the surface. Field note: sound over water. Sound behaves differently when it travels across flat, cold surfaces. Water creates refraction, bending sound waves back toward the listener and distorting both direction and distance. This effect is strongest at twilight, when warm air layers above the cooling lake. A shout from one side can seem to move, even chase you, as temperature and humidity shift. Predators in nature exploit this phenomenon instinctively. Owls, cougars, and even certain waterfowl mimic cries or distress calls to lure prey closer. In the wrong conditions, nature itself becomes a ventriloquist. And animals, particularly dogs, detect the shift long before we do. Their low-frequency hearing extends into the infrasound range, allowing them to sense vibrations we interpret only as dread. By now, Alex and Jordan were halfway across the lake. The fog rolled in, thin at first, then thick as wool. The voice came again. "Over here." Same 6 words, same rhythm. It timed perfectly with their paddle strokes. Dip, pull. Over here. Dip, pull. Over here. Jordan stopped paddling. The canoe drifted. "Don't answer," Alex whispered. They floated in silence, listening. For a moment, nothing. Then the voice again, but closer. "Over here." The exact same tone, not echoing, not fading, just replaying. Toby began whining louder now, pressing himself against the hull as if trying to disappear. His fur stood along his back. "Let's head to shore," Jordan said. Alex turned them around, but her hands shook. The paddles struck the water wrong, splashing too loudly. Instantly the voice changed direction, now coming from behind them. "Over here." It didn't echo anymore. It answered. They rowed hard, not caring where the shoreline was. The fog thickened, swallowing their wake. Every 12 seconds, the voice called again. The same spacing, the same volume, the same impossible nearness. "Over here, over here, over here, over here." When their canoe scraped sand, they leapt out and pulled it ashore. Toby bolted up the bank, barking once before stopping dead. The world went still again. Later, rangers recovered Toby's collar camera. The footage lasted just under 8 minutes. Most of it was fog, water, and the rhythmic sound of paddling. Then, near the end, a faint breathing sound, low, deliberate, measured. Every 12 seconds the audio spiked, as if something massive exhaled across the lake. Then, right before the file cut out, a whisper, thin, human, close enough to touch. Stay. Margin note, Ranger E. Ward. If water speaks with your own rhythm, don't listen. Some echoes are learning how to breathe. The interval. Ranger Elias Ward kept the recordings in a drawer that didn't have a label. 4 of them, each from a different park, a different decade, a different voice. The first was a canyon echo in Zion. The second, a meadow in the Smokies. The third, a caver's question that answered itself in Mammoth. The fourth, a call across the boundary waters that didn't belong to anyone alive. All of them shared one detail that no official report mentioned. Every unexplained sound, the breaths, the voices, the echoes, followed a precise rhythm, 12.3 seconds apart. He'd listened to them so many times that his body anticipated the silence between each pulse. He'd breathe when they did, stop when they did. The woods had their own metronome, and somewhere along the way he'd learned to keep time with it. He sat at his field desk now, headphones on, waveform glowing against the dim light. The ranger station was quiet except for the hum of the old recorder, the same kind that had been used in half those cases. Audio, 2014 Appalachian Loop. Crunch, crunch, pause. Then a breath that isn't his. Audio, 2017 Olympic Outpost. 2 overlapping voices whisper the same phrase. One begins half a heartbeat before the other. Audio, 2020 Boundary Waters. Measured exhale, water shifting, then the whisper, stay. Each sound distinct, each voice from a different place. Yet when he aligned the tracks on the timeline, they fell into sync, like instruments waiting for a conductor's cue. At exactly 12.3 seconds, the next pulse always came. Field insert, The Science of Hearing Voices. Humans are pattern-making machines. Under stress, the brain interprets random frequencies, wind, water, static, as speech. This reflex, called auditory pareidolia, evolved as an early warning system. We needed to hear danger before we could see it. In extreme isolation or low oxygen environments, this mechanism overreacts. Echoes take on tone, rhythm, even emotion. The mind begins to assign meaning to meaningless noise. But when multiple witnesses report the same timing, the same interval, science alone becomes an uncomfortable fit. Ward leaned back, rubbing at his eyes. The clock on the wall ticked in quiet defiance of the recordings. He opened his field journal, the one he kept for unofficial notes. Pattern confirmed. All cases share identical intervals between sounds, 12.3 seconds, too consistent for coincidence. He hesitated before writing the next line. Whatever these phenomena are, echoes, feedback, mimicry, they don't start with fear, they start with trust. He replayed each file, focusing on how the sound behaved before the panic began. In every case, the first voice was familiar. A friend's tone, a name said kindly, a laugh that should have been safe. The forest never startled them at first. It invited them closer. That was the part that haunted him. SAR protocol reminder, when you hear a call for help, search and rescue teams are trained to verify line of sight before responding. Many real-world tragedies occur because rescuers follow phantom cries through dense terrain, the result of echo loops or temperature inversions. Always mark position, wait 10 seconds, confirm direction twice. Sometimes what sounds human isn't. Ward clicked record and leaned into his mic. His voice came through low, worn, the sound of someone speaking for the last time in a long shift. Field log, final entry. Every ranger remembers the moment the woods stopped feeling empty. I've spent 15 years chasing echoes that shouldn't exist. Maybe they never did. But I've learned something. The forest remembers the tone you listen in. The voice that calls you isn't always asking for help. Sometimes it's asking for company. He paused. Outside, a wind brushed against the window screen, carrying that deep, rhythmic hum that always came before rain. He hit stop. For a moment, everything went still. Then, faintly, through the silent headphones, his own voice whispered back, half a second late. Company. When you hear your name in the wild, don't answer it too fast. The forest already knows it.